There's something I want you to think about for just a moment. You sit down to do something important, something you actually care about. And within minutes, sometimes seconds, your mind is somewhere else entirely. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because something inside you just won't stay still. And here's what nobody tells you. You've probably spent years blaming yourself for it. Most people will never understand this. They'll tell you to just focus, to try harder, to put your phone away, make a list, set a timer. And you've tried all of it, haven't you? Because you're not someone who gives up easily. You're someone who genuinely wants to show up for your work, for the people you love, for the version of yourself you know exists somewhere underneath all this noise. If you've ever quietly wondered why your mind works this way, why focus feels like trying to hold water in your hands, then this video was made for you. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't a diagnosis. It isn't a flaw. It's something far more interesting than that. By the time this video ends, you're going to understand something about yourself that most people spend their entire lives never discovering. You're going to see that what feels like a malfunction is actually your brain doing something extraordinary. Something that, once you understand it, will change how you see yourself completely. Stay with me. This is going to matter to you. The first thing you need to understand is this. Your inability to focus is not a failure of willpower. It is a signal, and your brain has been sending it for a reason. Psychology has shown us that the mind doesn't simply wander without cause. When your attention drifts, when you're supposed to be working but you find yourself staring at the ceiling, replaying a conversation from 3 years ago, or suddenly reorganizing your entire desk, your brain is not malfunctioning. It is protecting you from something it perceives as a threat. Think about that for a moment. You sit down to write the report, start the project, make the call, and your mind escapes. Not to rest, but to avoid. Because somewhere beneath your conscious awareness, your brain has associated that task with something it finds unsafe. Maybe failure, maybe judgment, maybe the terrifying possibility that you'll try your hardest and it still won't be enough. So it pulls you out, not to hurt you, but to keep you from being hurt. This is called psychological avoidance, and it doesn't look like hiding under a blanket. It looks like scrolling. It looks like cleaning the kitchen when you have a deadline. It looks like being endlessly busy with everything except the one thing that actually matters to you. If this sounds familiar, that is not weakness. That is a mind that learned, somewhere along the way, that staying present was dangerous. And the extraordinary thing about you is that you've kept trying anyway. Now, here's the second thing, and this one is going to feel very personal. The people who struggle most with focus are almost never the people who care too little. They are the people who feel everything too much. Psychology calls this emotional sensitivity, and research suggests that those who find it hardest to concentrate are often the same people who process the world at a deeper level than most. You don't just think about things, you feel them, you turn them over. You notice things other people walk right past. You pick up on tension in a room before a single word is spoken. You remember the small details, the tone someone used, the look on their face, the moment that felt slightly off. This kind of depth takes energy, enormous amounts of it. And when your brain is quietly processing all of that beneath the surface, the unresolved conversations, the unanswered worries, the things you carry without even realizing you're carrying them, there is simply less bandwidth left for the task in front of you. Your mind isn't scattered, it's full. There is a profound difference. And what looks like an inability to focus from the outside is often, on the inside, a mind that is doing too much at once. Processing, feeling, protecting, holding space for everything and everyone while simultaneously trying to hold space for yourself. That is not a disorder. That is depth. And depth, in a world that rewards surface-level thinking, can feel like a curse until you understand what it actually is. The third insight is one that might surprise you. Your focus doesn't fail you with everything, does it? Think carefully. There are certain things, specific topics, specific states, specific moments, where your attention becomes almost effortless, where an hour passes and it feels like 10 minutes, where you're so absorbed that the world around you disappears completely. Psychology has a name for this: hyperfocus. And it is the other side of the same coin. The minds that scatter the most easily are the very same minds capable of the deepest concentration, when the conditions are right, when the task feels meaningful, when curiosity is ignited, when something genuinely touches who you are. This tells you something important. Your capacity for focus has never been the problem. The mismatch between who you are and what you're being asked to do, that is the problem. You were never built for monotony. You were built for meaning. And when meaning is absent, your mind goes looking for it somewhere else. Not because you're broken, but because something in you refuses to be numbed. Most people will spend their whole lives doing work that doesn't reach them, thinking in patterns that don't challenge them, and never once questioning why they feel so restless. But you feel the restlessness. You notice the emptiness. You cannot force yourself to care about something that doesn't matter to you. And as uncomfortable as that is, it is one of the rarest and most important qualities a human being can have. The world calls it a problem. I want you to consider the possibility that it is a compass. The fourth insight is perhaps the most quietly painful one. Many people who struggle with focus are living with a nervous system that never fully learned how to feel safe. This isn't dramatic. It doesn't require a difficult childhood or a visible trauma. Sometimes it comes from years of criticism, being told you were too much, too slow, too distracted, too sensitive. Sometimes it comes from environments where you had to stay alert, where you couldn't afford to fully relax because something might change without warning. Sometimes it simply comes from carrying more than your share for longer than anyone realized. When the nervous system is quietly stuck in that state, not in crisis, just watchful, the brain cannot settle. It is biologically impossible. Focus requires a felt sense of safety, and if some part of you is still scanning for danger, still bracing for something to go wrong, the part of your brain responsible for deep concentration stays closed. And here is what I want you to hear, very gently. This is not your fault. You adapted, you learned, you built patterns that helped you survive conditions that deserved better from you. And now those same patterns are showing up in your daily life as an inability to concentrate, as restlessness you can't explain, as a bone-deep tiredness that sleep doesn't seem to fix. That is not laziness. That is the cost of having been strong for a very long time without being given enough softness in return. The fifth insight is about identity, and this one changes everything. Psychology shows us that one of the deepest reasons people struggle to focus is that they have never built a stable, compassionate relationship with themselves. When you don't fully know who you are, when your sense of self shifts depending on who's in the room, or how well you perform today, or whether someone seems pleased with you, your mind has nowhere solid to land. Focus is not just a cognitive skill, it is a form of inner stillness, and inner stillness requires a foundation, a quiet, steady sense of, I know who I am, I know what matters to me, I know my own worth, regardless of what I produce today. For people who were never given that foundation, who had to earn love through achievement, or shrink themselves to keep the peace, or become someone different in every room they entered, focus can feel impossible because they are, in a very real sense, still searching, still looking for a self stable enough to return to when the mind wanders. If you've ever felt like you don't quite know who you are when you're alone and there's nothing to distract you, this is why focus feels so difficult. The distraction isn't the problem. The distraction is the escape from that searching. And the way through it is not more discipline. It is deeper self-knowledge. It is learning to be with yourself, quietly, kindly, without judgment, until you no longer feel the need to run. And this brings us to the final thought, the one I want you to carry with you. What if everything you've been calling a flaw, the wandering mind, the scattered attention, the inability to simply sit still and do the thing, what if all of it has been pointing towards something true about you? What if your mind wanders because it is looking for something more aligned with who you really are? What if you can't force yourself through meaningless tasks because you were built for something that actually moves you? What if your restlessness is not a sign that something is wrong with you, but a sign that something in you is still very much alive, still reaching, still searching, still refusing to settle for a life that doesn't fit? You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not someone who simply needs to try harder. You are someone whose mind carries depth, whose nervous system carries history, whose heart carries more than most people will ever be willing to hold. And perhaps the most important thing you can do, not tomorrow, not someday, but beginning now, is to stop fighting the way your mind works and start getting curious about what it's trying to tell you. Because somewhere inside the wandering, inside the restlessness, inside the focus that arrives only when something truly matters, there is a map. And it is pointing, very quietly, toward the version of you that you have always been becoming. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are exactly the kind of person who needed to hear this today. If this video touched something in you, if it gave words to something you've long felt but couldn't quite name, then you're in exactly the right place. Subscribe and stay close, because there is so much more of this waiting for you. Insights that don't just explain the mind, they help you come home to it.